Hello and welcome back to OTGG's Unnamed Roguelite project. The most recent task we checked off the list was getting the generation to go infinite in every direction as opposed to being stuck. Previously, this is what it looked like. We were stuck with a 2000 tile by 2000 tile map. Okay, 2000 by 2000, that's 4 million tiles total, and we had 5 layers, so a whole total of 20 million tiles. As you can see, we used a very, very, very small amount of those, and a lot was wasted. So the new method is chunking up the generation, meaning new tile maps are placed as needed instead of just using one giant tile map. That has a couple hidden benefits and a couple obvious benefits. The obvious benefits are, well, I mean, it's a lot less intensive. I mean, there's just a ton less tiles to deal with. We still have a couple of issues, like this little tile right here. It's only using one tile of this whole tile map, so each square is a 16 by 16. So in that instance, it's 256 tiles total. It's using one of them, but that 256 tiles has 10 layers, so there's 2,560 tiles total in that technically, which is using one of them, which is bad. So I will still be experimenting with larger and smaller tile maps. So each of these little squares can get bigger or smaller. It doesn't really matter. The system doesn't care. I just change a number and it makes them smaller or bigger. So I will be testing bigger, larger, and smaller tile maps to see what's the most efficient method. Okay, so for the fancy magic, when I possess this back and scroll out, you can kind of see if I go up with my little debug pointer tool. So this is a tool that lets me do things in certain spots in the dungeon. And if I go up here, instead of just disappearing like it did before, because there was no more tile map, it just makes new tile maps as needed. That's it. So, which doesn't seem that impressive, but when you couple it with the random generation, so if I tell it to generate 5 levels in the up direction, see how it placed new tile maps as needed? Which means you can just keep going forever until your computer just catches on fire. I mean, basically. So I just keep going. So these are 5 rooms at a time. So I'm just going to keep going. Okay. And to kind of showcase what it can do, I'm going to generate 90 rooms here in a second. So press it right now. Give it a second because it needs to, it's rendering all of these tiles, and it needs to calculate all the new ones up there. So give it 1 second. There it goes. Okay. So just to show the scale of how infinite can be. Okay. For reference, if every tile map was an individual floor tile, this would be larger than certain other roguelike games. And clearly, there's a lot more, obviously. So, okay, so, and then to kind of showcase, hopefully we can get a couple small levels, so you can kind of see how it uses much less tile map area than before, which is awesome. I mean, that's what it needs to do. Okay. And then it just makes tile maps as needed. The cross in the background can be hidden, but I still need it for debug purposes. Like, this is a perfect example. So even though it needs stuff from the farthest bottom right points, which are here, up to the top left points, which are here, it doesn't need to cover the whole area with tile map. It just needs to cover the specific area it needs. I mean, pretty simple. Okay. And the bonus, which we weren't really aiming for at the time, but it's just kind of a nice to have, is that when I do something like this and generate, let's see, a couple rooms that way, well, a couple more rooms this way, a couple more rooms this way, you can kind of see it doesn't need to generate. See, it doesn't need to generate a whole giant tile map. The added benefit is if I'm zoomed in and let's say this is how high the actual camera will be, which I'm not sure, it's still way up in the air. You can see I'm touching, I mean, at max, 9 tile maps, barely. More like 6 tile maps, but we'll call it 9. So let's say it can it only has to render. I'm zooming out right now, so it only has to render basically this much. Everything outside of that can be unrendered. It can be cold. You know, the lighting doesn't have to be updated over there, which helps with lag and you know, just performance in general. So the levels can be much larger because you don't actually have to render all of that. Previously, I could not get the giant tile map to like cull things at distance because I couldn't find a way. I mean, there may be a way I just don't know about. That's perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine with this method. And that's pretty much the update. Everything else still works. So if I come up here, actually, I'm going to leave that for the next video. I'm going to leave some fancy stuff for the next video. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to make another awesome video soon. Thanks.